Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan and looked out into space. His ship was huge. It was 12 kilometers long and covered in weapons that could destroy planets. The Leviathan was the most powerful warship that humans had ever built. Jake had been captain for 5 years, and he had never seen anything like what was on his screens today. Lieutenant Amy Foster sat at her station and stared at the readings. She had found something impossible. There were buildings in space around the 4th planet in this system. These were not human buildings. Someone else had built them. "Captain," Amy said, her voice shaking, "you need to see this." Jake walked over to her station. On the screen, he could see structures that looked like crystal towers. They were beautiful and caught the light from the nearby star. The towers spun slowly in space, creating rainbow patterns. "How many are there?" Jake asked. 17 major structures, sir, and there are smaller ones too, maybe hundreds of them." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Sir, these are not natural. Someone built these things." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In all of human history, they had never found another intelligent species. Humans had spread to over 200 star systems, but they had always been alone. Until now. "Get me a full scan," Jake ordered. "I want to know everything about these aliens." The ship's computers worked for an hour. The results were surprising. The alien civilization was not very advanced. Their technology was about the same as Earth had in the year 2100, before humans learned how to build really good space weapons. Commander Rick Hayes looked at the scan results and frowned. "Captain, their ships are very small. Their weapons are weak. They use fusion power, but that's old technology for us." Jake nodded. The aliens had never fought a real space war. Their ships were built for exploring and trading, not fighting. Their biggest weapons were meant to shoot down asteroids that might hit their planets. They had no idea what real military technology looked like. "Sir," Amy said, "I'm picking up radio signals. They know we're here." On the 4th planet, Dr. Zara Velnash looked at her instruments with fear and wonder. She was the head scientist for her people, the Kepler. The Kepler had lived in peace for thousands of years. They had explored 17 different worlds and built a civilization based on learning and growing. But now something was coming toward them from deep space. Something massive. "The energy readings don't make sense," Dr. Velnash told her assistant. "This object is bigger than our largest space cities, but it's moving fast between the stars." Her assistant, a young Kepler named Jin Volmar, looked at the data. "Could it be a ship, Doctor?" "If it is a ship, then whoever built it has technology far beyond ours." Dr. Velnash felt afraid. The Kepler had always wondered if other intelligent life existed. They had hoped that if they ever met aliens, those aliens would be peaceful like themselves. The Kepler government met an emergency session. Senator Crix Voltar, the leader of their 17 worlds, looked at the reports with growing worry. "How long until this object reaches our system?" he asked. 3 days, Senator," replied the military commander, Thax Morden. "But sir, if this is really a ship, it's bigger than anything we can fight." The Kepler military was small and peaceful. They had 47 defense platforms around their worlds, but these were meant to stop space rocks, not alien warships. Their fleet had 200 ships, but they were explorers and cargo vessels, not fighters. Back on the Leviathan, Jake watched as more human ships arrived. The UES Hammer, a smaller destroyer, took position near his ship. Commander Danny Brooks was in charge of the Hammer. He was young but good at his job. "Captain Morrison," Danny's voice came through the radio. "Admiral Parker wants to speak with you." Admiral Lisa Parker was the head of Earth's Space Navy. Her flagship, the UES Colossus, was even bigger than the Leviathan. It was 28 kilometers long and had enough weapons to destroy entire star systems. When Lisa Parker spoke, everyone listened. "Jake," the Admiral's voice was calm and cold. "You've made an important discovery. These aliens might be useful to the Earth Colonial Administration. We need to approach this carefully." Jake understood. Earth had been expanding across the galaxy for 50 years. They had claimed over 200 star systems. When humans found a useful world, they took it. When they found useful resources, they took those too. Now they had found useful aliens. "What are your orders, Admiral?" Jake asked. "Study them, learn their language, find out what they have that we want. Then we'll decide what to do with them." Dr. Velnash watched her instruments as more energy signatures appeared on the edge of their system. Whatever was coming, it wasn't alone. 5 massive objects were now moving toward the Kepler worlds. "Senator," she said into her communication device, "there are more of them. 5 ships total. Each one is larger than our biggest space city." Kepler had built their civilization on 17 beautiful worlds. They grew crystal gardens in space and made art from the light of stars. They studied science because they loved learning. They explored space because they were curious about the universe. Now they realized that the universe was full of beings much more powerful than themselves, beings who might not share their love of peace and learning. Jake stood on his bridge and watched the alien structures grow larger on his screens. The crystal towers were even more beautiful up close. But beauty didn't matter in space war. What mattered was who had the bigger weapons. The Leviathan's weapons could crack planets. Its shields could stop any attack the aliens might try. Jake had fought in 12 different space battles during Earth's expansion. He had never lost. "Sir," Amy reported, "the aliens are trying to talk to us. They're sending out radio signals with pictures and math." Jake almost smiled. Radio signals and pictures. These aliens really didn't understand what they were dealing with. Human ships talked to each other using quantum communication that moved faster than light. Human computers could break alien codes in minutes. "Let them talk," Jake said. "Our computers will figure out their language soon enough." The Kepler sent everything they could think of. They transmitted their history, their art, their science. They sent pictures of their families and their beautiful worlds. They wanted to show these powerful strangers that they were a peaceful people who meant no harm. But Jake and his crew saw something else when they looked at the Kepler data. They saw worlds full of resources. They saw a species that could work in Earth's factories and mines. They saw another victory for human expansion across the galaxy. The discovery phase was complete. Now it was time for first contact. The Kepler hoped for friendship. The humans prepared for conquest. Admiral Lisa Parker stood in the command center of the UES Colossus and read Captain Morrison's report. The massive flagship moved slowly through space, its 28 kilometers of armor and weapons making it look like a floating city of death. Lisa had commanded Earth's space forces for 10 years. She had overseen the conquest of 43 alien worlds. This would be number 44. "Another primitive species," she said to her second-in-command, Colonel Ben Miller. "They have fusion, power and basic space travel. Nothing we haven't seen before." Ben nodded and looked at the tactical display. "Their biggest ships are only 300 meters long. Our fighters are bigger than that." Lisa smiled coldly. Earth's space fighters were 800 meters long and packed more firepower than the aliens' biggest warships. The humans had learned long ago that in space, size mattered. Bigger ships had more weapons, stronger shields, and better armor. These Kepler aliens would learn that lesson soon enough. 3 days earlier, the Kepler had detected the human fleet approaching their system. Dr. Zara Velnash had not slept since then. She sat in her laboratory and tried to make sense of the energy readings from the approaching ships. "The power output is incredible," she told her team. "Each ship generates more energy than our entire homeworld uses in a year." Her assistant, Jen, looked worried. "Doctor, what if they're hostile?" Dr. Velnash wanted to say that surely such advanced beings would be peaceful. But the ships approaching their system were clearly built for war. They were covered in weapon ports and armor plating. No peaceful explorer needed that much firepower. Senator Crix Voltar called another emergency meeting. The leaders of all day, 17 Kepler worlds appeared on the holographic display in the council chamber. They had been debating for 3 days, but they were no closer to a decision. "We must try to communicate with them," said Senator Yara Nix from the mining world of Kepler 7. "Maybe they're just being careful." Military Commander Thax Morden shook his head. "Senator, these are warships. Look at the scans. They have enough weapons to destroy our entire fleet 10 times over." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Senator Voltar. Should we just surrender without even trying to talk? Thax was quiet for a long moment. He had studied military history all his life. He knew what happened when a strong civilization met a weak one. Maybe surrendering is exactly what we should do. Commander Danny Brooks sat on the bridge of the UES Hammer and watched the Kepler system grow closer. His ship was the smallest in the human fleet, but it was still 5 kilometers long and could destroy planets. Danny was 28 years old and had already fought in 6 space wars. This looked like it would be the easiest one yet. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the aliens are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're sending us their entire cultural database." Danny laughed. "They're giving us their whole civilization's history. Why would they do that?" His tactical officer, Lieutenant Sue Davis, looked at the data streaming in from the aliens. "I think they're trying to show us they're peaceful, sir." "Peaceful or not, it doesn't matter," Danny said. "Admiral Parker's orders are clear. We're here to add their worlds to the Earth Colonial Administration. The Kepler were doing everything they could think of to show their peaceful intentions. They transmitted their greatest works of art. They sent detailed scans of their planets to show they had no hidden military bases. They even broadcast personal messages from Kepler families, hoping to show the aliens that they had children and loved ones they wanted to protect." Dr. Velnash worked day and night to prepare a message of greeting. She included mathematical formulas that showed the Kepler understood science. She added pictures of their beautiful crystal cities and their peaceful way of life. She hoped that beings advanced enough to travel between stars would be wise enough to value peace. But the human ships kept coming. They didn't change course or speed up their approach. They just kept moving steadily toward the Kepler worlds like they had all the time in the universe. On the Leviathan, Captain Jake Morrison stood in his briefing room and looked at the complete analysis of the Kepler civilization. His intelligence officers had broken their language in 6 hours. Human computers had analyzed every transmission and learned everything about Kepler society. "They're a peaceful species," reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Green. "No major wars in their history. Their government is based on scientific councils rather than military leaders." "What about their resources?" Jake asked. 17 worlds with standard mineral deposits. Their population is about 40 billion across all planets. They have some interesting crystal-growing technology that might be useful for industrial applications. Jake nodded. The Earth Colonial Administration would find uses for the Kepler. Their worlds would become mining colonies. Their people would work in human factories. Their technology would be absorbed into Earth's growing empire. "Sir," Kate continued, "they keep sending us messages. They want to establish peaceful contact and cultural exchange." "Cultural exchange," Jake repeated with amusement. "They still think this is some kind of diplomatic meeting." The truth was simpler. Earth had been expanding across the galaxy for 50 years. Every species they encountered was given the same choice: submit to human rule or be destroyed. Most chose submission. A few had chosen to fight. Those species no longer existed. Dr. Velnash received the first response from the alien fleet after 3 days of broadcasting messages. She was excited until she read what they had sent. It was a simple message in perfect Kepler language. "Prepare for integration into Earth Colonial Administration. Resistance will result in total extinction." Her hands shook as she read the message again. There was no greeting, no introduction, no attempt at diplomacy, just a cold demand for surrender. She immediately contacted Senator Voltaire. "Senator, they've responded to our messages. What do they say? Are they peaceful?" Dr. Velnash was quiet for a moment. "They want us to surrender, Senator. They're not here for cultural exchange. They're here to conquer us." The news spread across all 17 Kepler worlds in hours. Panic began to set in. Their most powerful weapons were designed to destroy asteroids, not fight space battles. Their ships were built for exploration, not war. How could they possibly fight beings with such advanced technology? Commander Thax Morden called his fleet commanders together. "We have 200 ships," he told them, "but they're not warships. Most of them don't even have weapons." Captain Vel Corinth, the most experienced ship commander in the Kepler fleet, looked at the tactical displays. Sir, our fusion missiles have a range of 50,000 kilometers. Intelligence reports say the human ships have weapons that can hit targets from millions of kilometers away. And their ships are protected by some kind of energy shield that bends space itself, added another captain. Our weapons might not even be able to damage them. Thax felt the weight of his species' survival on his shoulders. Every military simulation showed the same result. The Kepler fleet would be destroyed in minutes. Their worlds would be defenseless. But what choice did they have? Admiral Parker watched the Kepler fleet begin to move into defensive positions around their home world. It was almost touching how they thought their small ships could protect their people. She had seen this same hopeless courage from dozens of other species. Should we destroy their fleet now? Asked Colonel Miller. Not yet, Lisa replied. Let them make the first move. It makes the paperwork easier when we can say they attacked us first. The human fleet took position at the edge of the Kepler system. 5 massive warships faced 200 small exploration vessels. The outcome was never in doubt. But Admiral Parker was a professional. She would give the aliens one more chance to surrender before she wiped them out. Dr. Velnash made one final broadcast to the human fleet. We are a peaceful people. We have never harmed anyone. Please, there must be another way to resolve this. The response came immediately. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Any hostile action will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. The countdown to extinction had begun. Captain Jake Morrison decided the aliens needed to see what they were really facing. Words were not enough. The Kepler still seemed to think they had choices. They needed to understand that resistance meant death. Target the asteroid belt, Jake ordered his weapons officer. Find me a big rock, something impressive. Lieutenant Commander Kate Green worked at her targeting computer. Sir, there's an asteroid about 800 meters across. It's pure iron and rock. Very solid. Perfect, Jake said. Charge the gravitational lance array. Full power. The Leviathan's most powerful weapon began to warm up. The gravitational lance could bend space itself, creating forces strong enough to tear apart planets. It took 30 seconds to charge, and during those 30 seconds, space around the weapon seemed to shimmer and bend. On the Kepler homeworld, Dr. Velnash watched her instruments with growing fear. The largest human ship was powering up something that generated massive gravitational distortions. She had never seen readings like this. What are they doing? Asked Jin, her assistant. I don't know, Dr. Velnash replied. But whatever it is, it's creating forces that shouldn't be possible. The gravitational lance fired. The beam was invisible to normal sensors, but its effects were not. The 800-meter asteroid simply vanished. 8 billion tons of solid rock and metal were torn apart at the atomic level in less than a second. The energy release was so powerful that it registered on sensors throughout the Kepler system. Dr. Velnash stared at her readings. In horror, the asteroid was gone. Not destroyed, not broken apart, but completely erased from existence. The energy required for such destruction was beyond her understanding. They destroyed an entire asteroid, she whispered. In one shot. The implications hit her immediately. If the humans could erase an 800-meter asteroid instantly, they could do the same to any Kepler city, any Kepler world. With casual ease. Senator Voltar received Dr. Velnash's report with growing despair. You're certain? The asteroid is completely gone? Yes, Senator. Our deep space monitors recorded the entire event. They have weapons that can destroy our worlds without even landing on them. The senator sat down heavily in his chair. He had hoped that perhaps the humans were bluffing, that maybe their threats were empty. Now he knew better. Admiral Lisa Parker was satisfied with the demonstration's effect. Her sensors showed panic spreading across all 17 Kepler worlds. Their communications networks were flooded with emergency broadcasts and evacuation orders. Send them our terms, she ordered Colonel Miller. The message was broadcast simultaneously to all Kepler worlds in their own language. Surrender your territorial claims and submit to Earth Colonial Administration oversight. You have seen our capabilities. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures extinction. The message included detailed sensor logs of the asteroid's destruction, mathematical calculations showing that the same weapon could destroy planets, and a list of demands that would effectively end Kepler independence forever. Commander Thax Morden read the human demands with a heavy heart. The terms were brutal but simple. The Kepler would give up control of all their worlds. Their government would be dissolved. Their military would be disbanded. Their people would work under human supervision. Their technology would become human property. "It's slavery," said Captain Velcorinth. "They want to turn us into slaves." "The alternative is extinction," Thax replied quietly. But not everyone in the Kepler military was ready to give up. Captain Nex Torval commanded one of their few armed patrol ships. He had spent his whole life protecting Kepler trade routes from space pirates and asteroid strikes. The idea of surrendering without a fight went against everything he believed. "We can't just give up," he argued during the Emergency Military Council. "Yes, they're stronger than us, but we have to try." Thax understood the young captain's feelings. "Nex, they just erased an asteroid the size of our capital city. What do you think our weapons will do against ships that can create forces like that?" "Maybe nothing," Nex admitted. "But at least we'll die fighting instead of living as slaves." Dr. Velnash tried one more time to find a peaceful solution. She sent a personal message to the human fleet, addressed to whoever was in command. "We know you are more powerful than us," she transmitted. "We are not asking you to leave us alone. We are asking you to rule us with mercy. Let us keep our families together. Let us continue to learn and grow. We will serve you faithfully if you treat us with kindness." The response came from Admiral Parker herself. "You will serve us faithfully regardless of how we treat you. The only question is whether your species survives the integration process." The coldness of the reply chilled Dr. Velnash to her core. These beings saw the Kepler as nothing more than resources to be exploited. There was no kindness in them, no mercy, no recognition that the Kepler were intelligent beings with hopes and dreams of their own. On the UES Hammer, Commander Danny Brooks watched the alien fleet begin to move into attack formation. Their 200 ships looked impressive until Yubao compared them to even his small destroyer. The Hammer alone had more firepower than their entire military. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the aliens are powering up their weapons. It looks like they're going to fight." Danny nodded. "Prepare defensive positions, but don't fire unless they fire first. Admiral's orders." Lieutenant Sue Davis looked at the readings from the alien ships. "Sir, their most powerful weapons are fusion-tipped missiles. They might scratch our paint if they hit us." Danny almost felt sorry for them. They had to know this was hopeless. But something in their alien psychology was making them choose death over slavery. He could respect that, even if he thought it was stupid. The Kepler held one final council meeting. Senator Voltar looked around at the faces of his fellow leaders. They had governed 17 worlds in peace for over 1,000 years. Now their civilization was about to end. "We have 3 choices," he said quietly. "We can surrender completely and hope the humans treat us well. We can try to negotiate better terms, or we can fight." "Negotiate with what?" asked Senator Yara Nix. "They have all the power. They've already shown us what happens to things that displease them." Commander Thax spoke up from his position at the military advisor's table. "If we fight, we will lose. There is no question about that. The only question is how many of us will die before it's over." Dr. Velnash had been quiet during most of the discussion, but now she stood up. "I have studied the humans' broadcasts. I have analyzed their language and their behavior patterns. I don't think they see us as intelligent beings at all. To them, we are just another resource to be harvested." "Then what do you recommend, Doctor?" Senator Voltar asked. Dr. Velnash was quiet for a long moment. "I recommend we die with dignity, because I don't think they're going to let us live with it." The vote was close. 9 worlds voted to fight. 8 voted to surrender. Commander Thax was ordered to prepare the fleet for battle, knowing it would be the last battle the Kepler ever fought. Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet take attack positions and felt a mixture of respect and pity. They had courage, he had to give them that. Stupid, pointless courage, but courage nonetheless. All ships report ready for combat, reported his communications officer. Jake nodded. Very well. Signal the fleet. We'll let them fire first. Then, we'll show them what human military technology can really do. The demonstration was over. The real show was about to begin. Dr. Velnash sat in her laboratory and watched the tactical displays as both fleets prepared for battle. The energy readings from the human ships were incredible. Each one generated more power than her entire civilization used. Their weapons were charged and ready to unleash forces that could crack moons, but the Kepler ships were moving forward. Anyway, 200 small vessels flying toward certain death because they refused to live as slaves. She was proud of them and terrified for them at the same time. The final countdown to extinction had begun. Commander Thax Morden stood in the command center of the Kepler flagship and looked at the tactical display. 200 Kepler ships faced 5 human vessels. The numbers should have given him hope, but he knew better. His ships were explorers, and cargo haulers with basic weapons bolted on. The human ships were pure instruments of war. All ships report ready, Commander, said his communications officer. Thax nodded slowly. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment, though he had hoped it would never come. Every Kepler military officer studied the ancient wars of their ancestors, back when they still fought among themselves, but this was different. This was the end of everything. Signal all ships, Thax ordered. Remember, we fight not for victory, but so our children will know their parents died free. On the Kepler homeworld, families gathered around communication, screens to watch the battle. Parents held their children close and tried not to cry. Everyone knew this would be the last time they saw their brave defenders alive. Dr. Zara Velnash sat in her laboratory with tears in her eyes. She had tried so hard to find a peaceful solution. She had sent message after message to the humans, begging them to show mercy, but their responses had been cold and mechanical, like talking to machines instead of living beings. Doctor, said Jin, her assistant, maybe we should evacuate the research station. Dr. Velnash shook her head. Where would we go if our fleet loses? Nowhere will be safe. She looked at her instruments one more time. The human ships were still not at full power. They were holding back like adults playing with children. The thought made her angry. At least they could have the respect to take the Kepler military seriously. Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of the Colossus and watched the alien fleet approach. She had to admire their courage, even if she thought it was pointless. In her 10 years of commanding Earth space forces, she had seen many species choose death over slavery. It never ended well for them. Admiral, said Colonel Ben Miller, the alien fleet is within weapon range. Should we open fire? Not yet, Lisa replied. Let them fire first. It makes the official reports cleaner. She had conquered 43 worlds for Earth. Each conquest followed the same pattern. First came the demands for surrender. Then came the demonstration of power. Then came the hopeless battle. Finally came the occupation and integration into Earth's growing empire. This would be number 44. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Leviathan and watched the approaching Kepler ships. They were beautiful in their own way, with curved hulls that caught starlight and turned it into rainbow patterns. But beauty meant nothing in space war. Sir, reported Lieutenant Commander Kate Green, the lead alien ships are powering up their weapons, fusion missiles, and particle beam arrays. Jake almost smiled. Fusion weapons were what Earth had used 200 years ago, before they discovered gravitational manipulation and quantum disruptors. It was like watching someone try to fight a battleship with wooden arrows. All stations prepare for combat, Jake ordered. But remember, we don't fire until they do. Commander Danny Brooks sat on the bridge of the UES Hammer and felt almost sorry for the aliens. His ship was the smallest in the human fleet, but it still outgunned the entire Kepler military by itself. Sir, said Lieutenant Sue Davis, the alien flagship is trying to communicate with us. Put it through, Danny ordered. Commander Thax's image appeared on the screen. He was tall and thin, with blue-gray skin and large dark eyes. He spoke in accented but clear human language. I am Commander Thax Morden of the Kepler Defense Force. We know we cannot defeat you, but we will not surrender our freedom without a fight. Danny nodded with respect. I understand, Commander. For what it's worth, you have my admiration. Will you tell me your name? Thax asked. I would like to know who I'm fighting. Commander Danny Brooks of the UES Hammer. Thank you, Commander Brooks. I hope your victory brings you no joy. The transmission ended. Danny sat quietly for a moment. In all his years of fighting for Earth, he had never felt less proud of a battle before it even began. On the Kepler homeworld, Senator Crix Voltar made one final broadcast to his people. Citizens of the 17 worlds, today our defenders go into battle against an enemy far stronger than ourselves. They fight not because they can win, but because some things are worth dying for. Whatever happens today, remember that we chose our fate as free beings. The broadcast reached every Kepler world instantly. On mining stations and crystal farms, in deep space habitats and planetary cities, 40 billion Kepler listened to their leader's final speech. Dr. Velnash turned off the broadcast and looked at her instruments. The two fleets were now only 50,000 kilometers apart. At space combat ranges, they were practically touching. The human ships are still not at full power, she reported to her team. They're treating this like a training exercise. The truth was even worse than she knew. Admiral Parker had ordered her fleet to use only secondary weapons during the battle. She wanted to save ammunition, and she didn't want to completely vaporize the Kepler ships. The Earth Colonial Administration preferred to have some wreckage to study. Commander Thax gave the order he had hoped never to give. All ships commence attack, fire at will. 200 Kepler ships opened fire simultaneously. Fusion missiles streaked across space toward the human fleet. Particle beam arrays lit up the darkness with deadly light. It was the most powerful military strike the Kepler had ever launched. The human shields didn't even flicker. Admiral Parker watched the alien attack with professional interest. The fusion warheads exploded against her ship's gravitational shields, like raindrops against a window. The particle beams were absorbed and redirected harmlessly into space. Impressive coordination, she noted to Colonel Miller. Their tactics are actually quite good for such a primitive species. Should we return fire now, Admiral? Yes, but remember, secondary weapons only. We want some of them left to study. The human counterattack began, but instead of the devastating gravitational lances that had destroyed the asteroid, they used conventional plasma cannons and missile systems. It was like using a hammer to swat flies, but it would do the job. The UES Hammer fired first. Its secondary plasma array sent 20 bolts of superheated matter toward the Kepler fleet. Each bolt had enough energy to destroy a small moon. 20 Kepler ships vanished in bright flashes of light. Commander Thax watched his ships die and felt his heart break. The humans were using their weakest weapons, and his ships were being destroyed by the dozens. It wasn't even a battle. It was an execution. All ships evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Spread out and attack from multiple directions. But it didn't matter. The human ships could track and target hundreds of objects simultaneously. Their computers calculated firing solutions faster than Kepler pilots could think. Within minutes, half the Kepler fleet was gone. Dr. Velnash watched the battle through her sensors and wept. Each dying light on her screen represented hundreds of brave Kepler who had chosen death over slavery. They were losing badly, but they kept fighting. Captain Jake Morrison watched the slaughter with growing discomfort. The aliens were showing incredible courage, but they were being wiped out like insects. There was no honor in this kind of one-sided destruction. Sir, reported Kate Green, the alien flagship is damaged but still fighting. They're trying to ram one of our escort ships. Jake watched as Commander Thax's ship, its hull cracked and burning, accelerated toward a human destroyer. It was a desperate act that would accomplish nothing, but Jake had to respect the gesture. The Kepler flagship exploded before it could reach its target, destroyed by a single plasma bolt from the human ship it had tried to ram. Commander Thax died without seeing his sacrifice accomplish anything meaningful. The battle lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, the entire Kepler fleet was gone. Not a single human ship had even been scratched. Admiral Parker opened a channel to all 17 Kepler worlds. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your defenders are dead. You now have two choices. Complete surrender or total extinction. You have 1 hour to decide. Dr. Velnash sat in her laboratory and stared at the empty space where the Kepler fleet had been. 200 ships and their crews gone forever. The bravest and best of her people had died for nothing. Doctor, Jin asked quietly, what do we do now? Dr. Velnash looked at the human ships moving into orbit around their worlds. Each ship had enough firepower to destroy entire continents. There really was only one choice left. We surrender, she said quietly, and we pray they show us more mercy than they showed our fleet. The age of Kepler freedom was over. The age of human rule was about to begin. Dr. Zara Velnash stood in what had once been the Kepler Council chamber and watched human soldiers set up monitoring equipment. 3 months had passed since the battle that destroyed her people's fleet. 3 months since the Kepler had surrendered. To avoid total extinction, the humans had kept their word. They had not killed everyone. But sometimes Dr. Velnash wondered if that had been a mercy or a cruelty. Admiral Lisa Parker sat behind the desk that had once belonged to Senator Crix Voltar. The Kepler leader had been removed to a work camp on the mining world of Kepler 7. His crime was being the former head of an independent government. The Earth Colonial Administration did not tolerate independent governments. Dr. Velnash, Admiral Parker said in her cold, professional voice, your latest research report is 3 days late. Dr. Velnash bowed her head. I apologize, Administrator. The new quantum resonance experiments are more complex than I expected. The Earth Colonial Administration does not accept excuses for poor performance. You will complete the report today or face punishment. Dr. Velnash nodded quickly. Under human rule, punishment meant being sent to the labor camps where former Kepler government officials and military officers worked until they died. She had seen too many of her friends disappear already. Admiral Parker looked at her with the same expression someone might use when examining an interesting insect. Your crystal-growing technology has potential military applications. We want you to modify it to grow weapon components. But Admiral, our crystal gardens were meant to create beauty and art. They were never intended for weapons. They are intended for whatever purposes Earth requires, Parker replied sharply. You will begin modifications immediately. Dr. Velnash wanted to refuse. The crystal gardens were sacred to her people. They represented everything beautiful and peaceful about Kepler civilization. But she had no choice. Refusal meant death or the labor camps, and her death would not save the crystal gardens. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the streets of what had been the Kepler capital city. The buildings were still beautiful, with their flowing curves and rainbow-colored walls. But the city felt dead now. Human patrol soldiers stood on every corner. Kepler citizens hurried past with their heads down, afraid to make eye contact with their conquerors. The integration had been swift and efficient. The Earth Colonial Administration had dissolved the Kepler government on day 1. Their military had been disbanded, and their weapons destroyed. Their schools now taught human history and human values. Their children learned that Earth was the center of the universe, and that all other species existed to serve humanity. Sir, said Lieutenant Commander Kate Green, who walked beside Jake, the productivity reports from the mining operations are excellent. The Kepler workers are very efficient. Jake nodded. The Kepler were naturally suited for precision work, which made them valuable for extracting rare minerals from their worlds. Their long, delicate fingers could operate mining equipment that human hands found difficult to control. What about resistance activities? Jake asked. Minimal, sir. We've arrested about 50 Kepler who were passing around illegal literature. They're being sent to the re-education camps. Jake felt uncomfortable with the re-education camps, though he didn't show it. The camps were where Kepler, who still believed in independence, were sent to have their minds broken. Most who went there came back as empty shells who did whatever humans told them to do. But orders were orders. Earth needed the Kepler worlds, and the Kepler needed to accept their place in the human empire. Commander Danny Brooks stood on the observation deck of the UES Hammer and watched cargo ships loading Kepler crystal components for transport to Earth. The crystals would be used to build better weapons for humanity's next conquests. His communications officer approached with a report. Sir, we've received orders for our next assignment. The Deep Space Scouts have found another alien civilization. In the Ross 128 system, Danny took the report and read it quickly. Another species with primitive technology. Another world that would soon learn what it meant to resist human expansion. Prepare the ship for departure, Danny ordered. And send a message to Admiral Parker. Tell her we're ready for the next conquest. Dr. Velnash worked late into the night in her laboratory, trying to complete the modifications to her crystal-growing technology. The work made her sick to her stomach. She was turning something beautiful into an instrument of death. Jin, her assistant, had been sent to the labor camps 2 weeks ago. His crime was asking why the humans needed so many weapons if they were truly bringing peace to the galaxy. Dr. Velnash missed him terribly, but she dared not ask about his condition. Doctor, said a voice behind her. She turned to see a human technician named Carl Weber. He was young and seemed less cruel than most of the human overseers. The administrator wants to see your progress, Carl said. But then he moved closer and whispered, Doctor, I want you to know that not all humans support what we're doing here. Dr. Velnash looked at him in surprise. It was the first sign of kindness she had seen from a human in months. Then why don't you stop it? She whispered back. Carl's face was sad. Because the ones who make the decisions don't care what people, like me, think. They only care about power and resources. Before Dr. Velnash could respond, Carl straightened up and spoke in his normal voice. Please have the report ready for inspection in 1 hour. On the former Kepler homeworld, children who had once played in crystal gardens now worked in human factories. They assembled components for Earth's war machines 12 hours a day. The human overseers said it was educational. They said it taught the young Kepler the value of hard work and service to their betters. Many of the children had forgotten what their world looked like before the humans came. They had forgotten the stories their parents told about freedom and independence. They only knew the gray walls of the factories and the endless repetition of assembly work. Admiral Parker reviewed the final integration reports with satisfaction. The Kepler worlds were now producing more resources than Earth had projected. The population was docile and productive. There had been no serious resistance in over 2 months. Prepare my ship for departure, she ordered Colonel Miller. The Kepler integration is complete. Time to move on to the next system. Miller looked at the reports. Admiral, what about the Kepler who are still in the re-education camps? Leave them. The local administrators can handle them now. Our job here is finished. Parker stood and looked out at the Kepler homeworld one last time. It had been a beautiful planet when they arrived. Now it was covered with human mining installations and processing plants. The rainbow-colored cities had been painted gray to match Earth's industrial standards, but it was producing valuable resources for humanity's expansion. That was all that mattered. Dr. Velnash completed her modifications to the crystal-growing technology, just as the humans had demanded. The beautiful, artistic crystals her people had grown for thousands of years could now be shaped into weapon components. Another piece of Kepler culture had been corrupted and enslaved. She submitted her report and then sat alone in her laboratory. Through her window, she could see human ships moving through space around her world. They would stay there forever, watching and controlling everything the Kepler did. Sometimes she wondered if Commander Thax and the others who had died in the battle were the lucky ones. At least they had died free. The survivors had to live as slaves, watching their civilization slowly disappear under human rule. But late at night, when the human overseers were asleep, Dr. Velnash would sometimes look up at the stars and wonder. Somewhere in the vast universe there had to be beings powerful enough to challenge Earth's expansion. Beings who could give humanity a taste of what the Kepler had experienced. She knew she would never live to see such a day. But maybe her children's children might. Maybe someday, someone would arrive in Earth's solar system with weapons that could crack planets and demands for unconditional surrender. Maybe someday, humanity would learn what it felt like to be on the receiving end of first contact with a superior civilization. But that was just a dream. For now, the Kepler would work in their factories and mines, growing weapons for their conquerors and resources for humanity's next conquest. The Earth Colonial Administration had 44 worlds under its control, and Admiral Parker was already planning to make it 45. The age of human expansion continued, one conquered world at a time. In the end, the Kepler had become just another footnote in Earth's march across the galaxy. Their beautiful crystal cities were gone, replaced by efficient human industrial complexes. Their art and culture survived, only in human museums displayed as curiosities from a primitive species, but they had served their purpose. They had provided resources, labor, and technology that would help humanity conquer the next species they encountered. And the next one after that. Captain Jake Morrison filed his final report on the Kepler integration and prepared for his next assignment. Somewhere out there, human scouts were finding new worlds with new species to conquer. The work was never finished. The galaxy was large, but humanity had time. They would claim it all, one world at a time, one species at a time, until every star in the sky flew Earth's flag. It was humanity's destiny to rule the universe.